Good evening, I'm A.J. Wilson, and welcome to our Google Plus Hangout Town Hall with Governor Rick Snyder. No state-related question is off the table tonight, whether you are here in our studio audience or joining us elsewhere across the state. Tonight we have a live audience at Mount Calm Community College with our host representative, Rick Outman. We're also joined by State Representative Mark Ouimet at the Washtenaw County Intermediate School District. We'll also be taking questions from the ITT Tech campus with our host, State Representative Peter McGregor. And finally, we have the folks from the Lapeer County Education and Technology Center with host State Representative Kevin Daley. We're broadcasting from Lansing in front of a live studio audience. If you have a question from any of our sites tonight, please fill out the question card provided as you entered the building. Staff will collect the cards, and your state representative will ask the questions directly of Governor Rick Snyder. Here in Lansing, staff will collect the cards, and I'll send the questions on to the governor. Now, live from downtown Lansing in the great state of Michigan, our Governor Rick Snyder.
Hi, guys. How's everyone doing? Great. Well, welcome out there. It looks like we got a pretty good crowd in these spots. This is awesome. So I appreciate you taking the time. And it's worked well so far. We're a technology experiment here. Those of you know I ran as a nerd, so we're trying to live up to that billing. So it's worked out really well in the past, and we have several sites going. I really appreciate all our representatives being part of this process because it's about how we can all learn together. So what I try to do when I do a town call is two things. The first thing is try to give you an update about what's going on in Lansing, at least from my perspective. And the second thing that I really find valuable is I want to learn from you because you're my customer. And it's really a way to learn, and I learn by the questions that you ask, because it gives me a perception of what's on your mind, what you're thinking about, what's important to you, and hopefully it's a chance to have a dialogue and help answer those questions so we can keep getting better. Because I view it as continuous improvement. I always want to improve. Every day I get up, it's how do you be better? So it's great to be with you. So let me start with a short update on Michigan. The good part is we're making a major comeback. We were at the bottom, if you go back to 2009, 2010, in terms of many statistics, in serious trouble. And I appreciated the opportunity to run for office. I said, here's a whole bunch of things I hope to do. And I believe we've done pretty well at doing a lot of those things. The main theory was to reinvent Michigan, because Michigan was broken. So fixing Michigan was not good enough. It's really about reinvention. And it's a focus on two main things: more and better jobs and a bright future for our kids. And in terms of doing that, one of the key things is defining what is the role of government. We don't talk about that enough or think about that. Because if you step back and look at it, if government's broken and you want to create jobs, what's the role we should play in creating jobs? Well, one of the things I've always said, and I firmly believe in, government's role is not to hire everyone. It's not to actually go out and create jobs. I mean, if you think about it, wouldn't it be really scary if everyone worked for the state of Michigan? We've got great people working at the state, but if we all did, that would be really scary. The role of government is to help create an environment for success, for small business people to go create companies, for medium-sized businesses to grow, to allow people to be entrepreneurial. And the other part that comes with that is, why is government around in addition to that? Too often I believe the American political culture is broken today. We've got the best system in the world, but it's pretty broken in terms of how it operates. And what do I mean by that? Just look at Washington. It's all about fighting all the time. And it's all about negative energy, people being negative. That's not the answer. And the other answer you see if you look at Washington and you look at our debt issue, too much of government has become where people believe it's just taking money and spending money. That's not why we exist. So one of the things I tried to bring was a different approach to Michigan. And the key part is defining what is the role of government. And it's really simple in my view, coming from the private sector. We're a customer service business. And you're my customer. And the organizations of our state and the citizens of the state, you're all my customer. And you hired us to give you great customer service, to show you real results. So in some ways, you may not feel that way when you get that tax bill. But in the broadest sense, the way I view it is you're deciding to buy so much government. Whether that be public safety or education, you're making a purchase decision and you got other things you could buy. And my goal is to make you feel really good that you made a smart purchase decision. To say this is the right amount of government and you're seeing something that's value for money. And that's a very simple concept, but I think it makes a real difference. The second big difference that we're doing as part of this cultural issue compared to Washington and other places is how we're doing things. A phrase I live by every day when I get up is something called relentless positive action. And that begins, there's 2 or 3 pieces. The first piece is we don't blame anyone for anything. We've got a lot of things that are messed up going back a few years to 40 or 50 years. But have you ever seen blame solve a problem? It doesn't make any difference. Move on. Let's solve the problem. And then we don't worry about taking credit. Because who gets credit doesn't matter. You need to put the solution in place and show results. And so in a simple sense, relentless positive action is an attitude to say it's all about just solving problems and using common sense to solve problems and to solve one problem after another in a relentless fashion. And that's the approach we're doing, and I think we're really standing out. Because if you look at us versus Washington, we were at the bottom. I'm proud to say we're the comeback state in the United States today. We've made tremendous progress. Washington can learn from us about doing a better tax system, about balancing a budget, about a whole bunch of different reforms. But what I'll tell you is we should not be content with where we're at. The work is not done. We shouldn't be happy with how things are. We should be pleased we've made progress. But we need to keep going. If anything, we could go faster and do more. And that's my approach. Because I'm old enough, I know a few of you, I can look in this crowd and see, we all have lived through this many times before in terms of recessions and such in Michigan. We have a history in this state. I go back to '82 when I started my first job. We'll go through terrible times, but when we were coming out of them, we'd go back to the same old habits that got us in the mess to begin with. And how many times did we live through that? And each time we went a little farther downhill overall. Well, that's what reinvention is about, to say we're not going to do that again. We're going to go back to being a top state again. And we're on that path because we're doing it in a positive way. So that's really exciting. So I really appreciate the opportunity to share those thoughts with you. Again, I could have gone through a lot of different activities we've done, but I think it's really important that we get on the same page about how we're doing things, why we're doing things, and that this is a big team of Michiganders working together. And that's what's exciting. So with that, let me stop and really start hearing some questions and having some good interaction. I love town halls. I just did a tour of the UP last week. Did 4 town halls up in the Upper Peninsula. Just before that, I did the Northwestern Shoreline, a couple stops, and just on Monday, I was in Rogers City and Alpena doing town halls. So getting around, but I love this format because we can do a whole bunch of places at once from a lot of good people. So with that, AJ, why don't we get started? What's the first question?
All right, Governor, Virginia's here from East Lansing. Virginia, could you raise your hand for us? And Virginia is asking, please explain the situation on the bridge, what Canada is willing to do, and what the cost is to us.
Great. Well, I appreciate that. Well, thank you for asking that one, Virginia. Because the big issue is there's so much misinformation out there on the bridge issue. And I found that was in the UP. Literally, I'd ask the question, how many people had gotten a direct mail piece on the bridge in the last week or two in the Upper Peninsula? And almost everyone raised their hand. And the tough part is there's one special interest, the people that own the Ambassador Bridge, that have spent over $5 million giving bad information to people, misinformation. And why do they do that? Because they're making a lot of money, and they really don't have competition. And they want to keep making lots of money. So they're spending it. To step back and look at the bridge, let me give you a little history. I had no position on the bridge until I became your governor. In the campaign, I didn't take one because I just made the simple statement I didn't know enough. I needed to do some more homework on the bridge. So when I got in office, I started doing that homework. And to give you my background, if you don't know, besides being a nerd, I'm an old accountant. Well, I like that. Virginia, we're in good standing here. It looks like you're with somebody that likes accountants. I like that. So I'm an old accountant. So I went through a lot of this myself. And it all came down to jobs. And the big picture is, if you step back and look at this situation, draw a circle from Montreal to Chicago. It's a third of the North American economy. 1/3 is that circle. Now, who's in the middle of that circle? Michigan. Now, that's a really cool spot to be, right? Except, we have one thing every one of us loves that we couldn't change if we wanted to, and we wouldn't want to change it. If you look at a map, it's called the Great Lakes. That doesn't make it really easy sometimes to do a lot of trade. The way you'd need to do trade then is you got to have crossings. And that's our constraint. So the real issue, though, is now we have an opportunity to grow jobs all through Michigan by having more crossings. Because we have the busiest crossings now on the northern border, busiest commercial crossings in the country. And there's backups. Literally, if you ask the car companies, each of the major car companies have 600 to 800 trucks a day going back and forth. And there are delays and holdups. And it's costing jobs already today, time and money. And if you think about the future growth, what an opportunity. Because there are opportunities to do more trade. And Canada, by far, is our biggest trade partner. So it's about long-term jobs. And when people say it's about Detroit, it's not. There's actually a higher percentage of jobs, for example, in Grand Rapids, that are export-related than there is in Detroit. It's true all across Michigan. And there are many places, if you're in agriculture or manufacturing, export is your future. If you're in ag, 60% of our exports go to Canada. And then you stop and say, short term, it would create lots of construction jobs. But that's not the reason to do it. It would create about 10,000 jobs over several years to build the bridge. But then you stop and say, okay, how much is this going to cost? Well, the Canadians recognized our difficult financial situation, so they said they would pay for the bridge. There's no obligation to Michigan taxpayers to build this bridge. Canada will put up the money for the Canadian portion and the American portion. And it would be repaid by tolls from the bridge. And we have a legal agreement that says that. And more than that, we've had the Prime Minister of Canada standing in Michigan, in Detroit, saying Canada is committed to building this bridge. And they'll pay for overruns, it'll be repaid from tolls, and there isn't an obligation on us. Now that's pretty impressive. Why are they so bullish on this bridge? Because they believe in international trade. The Prime Minister also said it's the single most important infrastructure project in Canada during his tenure as Prime Minister. Think about that, for the entire country of Canada. It's that important. And if you think about a bridge now, if one side has 50% of the trade, shouldn't we have the other 50% of the trade? That's a good answer. So there is no obligation to Michigan taxpayers in terms of our dollars. The good part is there's an extra icing on this, is we went then and said to the federal government, the U.S. government, to say, can we use those Canadian investment dollars on the Michigan side to do federal road match projects? Because right now we're somewhat constrained in terms of federal matching dollars. Because again, we're still working through our budget issues. And they said yes. So those Canadian dollars could be used to help do road projects in every corner of Michigan. This is not just a good deal, folks. This is a really good deal. And I really encourage you to get behind it. And this would be a no-brainer except for the fact we've got that one party spending millions of dollars to give out bad information. So please support the bridge. Please pass word on about what a great project this is. It's about jobs. And that's really cool. So I really appreciate you asking. Sorry the answer's a little long, but I want to make sure you got all the history, given the nature of all the communications. One of the fun things, if you want, you can actually go, there's something called the Michigan Truth Squad online, and you can actually see, they've called foul on these ads. So you can actually go look it up to say there's an objective third party, the press. They go and review these ads, and they actually have shot down the last mailer I saw. I don't know, they may have a new mailer out, but a mailer that was just done last week or so. Great.
Governor, Representative Outman is standing by at Montcalm Community College, and he's on live with us via Google Hangout. Representative, your question for the governor.
Thank you, Governor. This question is, has Michigan discussed opting out of Obama health care? And if not, why not?
Oh, well, thanks. And you look good, Rick. You look like you're giving a lecture.
Thank you.
Yeah, the Affordable Care Act and the whole issue. The easy way I'll summarize it for you is the Affordable Care Act was a big misfire. And it was a misfire in terms of solving our healthcare issues. It's a real challenge because if you stop and look at it, think about all the energy of the American political world that has been taken up by the Affordable Care Act. It dominates things, right? In terms of the discussion and all that. Whether you like it or not, whatever the Affordable Care Act does, it does not address the most important issues in healthcare. It will not solve our healthcare crisis in this country. And that's what really bothers me the most, is there are at least two more important topics that the Affordable Care Act does not address. And most political people are not talking about this. They get caught up in all the Affordable Care Act stuff. But I want to be open with you. In my view, and I think I've got a lot of experts that can back that up, is there are more important issues. The most important thing we should be talking about in healthcare is wellness. It's a simple concept of personal responsibility. If you look at wellness, if we all managed our own health care where we were in the normal range of like blood pressure, blood sugar, cholesterol, weight, we managed all those things, our health care costs in this country would be less than half of what they are today. That's the gigantic one. The second issue after that is something dealing with cost containment. It's a concept called the patient-centered medical home, which basically says a person or a family has one place to go for sort of one-stop shopping on all their health issues that can help manage them all. They may end up going to different specialists in something, but there's somebody looking over the whole thing, all your prescriptions, all your things, to know all the interactions, to know you, and to treat you the right way. And there are good places already doing it in this country, but it's not as widespread as it should be. Both those issues are more important than the Affordable Care Act by orders of magnitude. So I encourage you, when you hear people spend all this time arguing, go like this. Time out. Let's talk about more important things and not overlook those. So I can tell you from a Michigan perspective, we are working on those first two. Those are higher priorities to me. Now, the Affordable Care Act is the law. I mean, we went through the Supreme Court process. A lot of people wanted to wait. We waited. It came down. It made a decision. Now the question is, what do we do as a state? Well, my preference is to say, let's keep our options open. So what I wanted to do was really have a situation where we could either, if we had to, was to do a federal exchange or a state exchange. With my preference, my gut telling me I would rather do a state exchange. I don't know about you, but if I have a choice between Lansing and Washington, I sort of like what we'd probably do in Lansing better than what we'd get out of Washington. So we tried to set up a situation where we had planned to do a state exchange, depending on the deadlines and all the requirements, and continuing to watch how November turns out. Not everyone agreed with that. The House of Representatives took a different approach. They didn't agree with that, so they didn't appropriate the dollars for us to do the planning. And I respect it. They have a different perspective or view. So basically, because of their decision, we're on a path to have a federal exchange in Michigan. And that may change because the deadline's changing or November, but the current path we're on, without major changes in legislation or deadlines, we will have a federal exchange in the state of Michigan when the scheduled launch date will come. I wish we had a better answer. I wish we had the state answer available, but that's the answer at this point in time.
Governor, thanks. Representative Ouimet is standing by at the Washtenaw Intermediate School District, and we're going to talk to him via Google. Representative?
Thank you. And Governor, good to see you.
Good to see you. It looks like you're ready for the test.
Well, yeah, in some way or another. This question, actually, there's a couple folks have asked this question this evening. And it is, why did you tax my pension and now will double my health insurance premium while I'm already in the retirement pipeline and do not have the time to recover?
Yeah, no, the pension one in particular, I'm glad people asked that, because that was a very tough situation. That I like when people ask that, because it's a chance to really talk about it, to share the philosophy behind these things. That was a really tough call. And why do I say that? That was one of those things that if you looked at all the analysis, it's a question that could have been answered. It might have been able to wait 5, 10 years, 20 years. But one of the things I think you hired me to do that tied into Reinventing Michigan was to have a governor that wasn't going to just kick the can down the road. There was going to be someone that was going to stand up and take on problems that had been problems or mistakes we made 40 or 50 years ago. And to say, we're going to take it on now. And we're going to clean it up. And we're going to solve the problem. So we don't leave future leaders or the next generation or your kids with a huge problem. And that's the case in this situation. And to give you the history of this situation, you have to go back to the 1960s. When they put in the Michigan income tax back in the 60s, they made a decision to say certain types of public employee retirement income will be excluded from the Michigan income tax. And that went on for a few years. But after a few years, they recognized they made a mistake. They realized that wasn't a very smart decision. So they modified that. So their solution to solving that problem is they said, let's go and also exclude a whole bunch of different kinds of private retirement income. Not all, but a whole bunch of different groups from private retirement income. So they made the problem a whole lot bigger instead of solving the issue. And why do I say they're making a big problem by making those exclusions? One of the things that was really clear when I ran that I know I was elected on was our kids. A lot of us want to make sure, whether they're our own kids ourselves, but we think about all the kids in Michigan, we want to encourage them to stay in Michigan and have a future in our state, right? So if you think about this tax system we designed, what do we do? Because over the next 10 to 20 years, we're going to have a much greater aging population. A lot more people that are retired. So why we're all saying we want to keep our young people in the state, we designed a tax system to say, for the older generation, they're not going to have to help contribute to the cost of government, and we're going to shift all that burden to our young people. So while we're saying we want to keep our young people in the state and we want them to stay here, we are also saying, let's stick them with the tax bill. Let's move the tax burden to our young people. Make them carry the bill. Now, I don't know about you, but most young people I think are pretty smart. And they're going to say, well, you're telling me one thing, but you're really showing me that I should go someplace else because you think I should carry the load. I don't think that was a good answer. The other part that took place is if you didn't happen to have the right kind of retirement income, or if you didn't happen to have a retirement income where you had to keep working and you were a senior, you were subject to Michigan income tax on all your earnings. In my view, that wasn't very fair. Just because you happen to work in one place versus another place, someone's not paying tax and somebody else is. That's not a good answer either. So this is something that I believe we messed up on a long time ago. Now the question is, how do you solve it? So the issue is, long term, we want to have a much fairer way of taxing income in the state of Michigan. So we said most retirement income is going to be part of the system, but let's put in a transition, because that very question is, we don't want to create undue hardship for people that are retired or seniors that are already relying on it. So we did that. If you happen to be 67 years old or older, the rules for pension and retirement income didn't change. You're not going to pay tax on that income. If you're between 60 and 67, we didn't leave all the exclusions, but we put in another special exclusion to help people in that category. It was really people 60 and less, under 60 years old, that were going to have their income subject to the system. But what I'll tell you is even in that case, seniors, those people will get a preference longer term, because we're not subjecting Social Security tax at all, Social Security to tax at all. Or we have an alternative, whichever is better for people, to have an exclusion of $20,000 or $40,000 for a married couple for any kind of income. And that's a better deal than our young people are getting. So this is one of those issues that, again, might have been able to wait 5, 10, 20 years, but think how big that problem would build and what a mess that would be. So to be open with you, Yeah, we took on a really tough, ugly issue. That a lot of people got really mad at me. Got mad at some other people. But I hope you can appreciate it. When you hear the full story, if we really cared about our kids, and we really cared about being fair, this was a really good thing to do for the long term. And again, with the transition, our goal was to do no harm to people that are already relying on it. They're 70 years old, 80 years old, and then create a path where people, if they're younger, can work through it in some fashion with plenty of time.
Thanks, Governor. In Grand Rapids, Representative McGregor is standing by at the ITT Tech. Go ahead, Representative.
Good evening, Governor, and thank you for inviting and listening to Grand Rapids. I have a question from Eileen Ostrander from Belmont, Michigan, which is on the north side of Grand Rapids. And she wants to know what are your present and future intentions for the care of our veterans living in the Grand Rapids Veterans Home in Grand Rapids. And maybe you also can talk about some of the veterans that are coming back from overseas, how Michigan is going to, or our goals for those veterans coming back from overseas.
Yeah, well, thank you, Peter. Because veterans are a key issue. And again, whether it's the Grand Rapids home or Jacobetti home up in Marquette, we want to have the homes working well for our veterans. We ended up in a lawsuit over some of the issues about being more cost efficient in Grand Rapids while still providing great care. But our goal is to really take care of our veterans because they deserve it. And on the whole veteran question, we as Michiganders, we as a state did a pretty crappy job of taking care of our veterans when it came to helping them find employment in terms of helping them find health care. There was one metric that came out last year or so, I believe on the healthcare side, that we ranked 53rd. We're behind Guam. And that's not an acceptable answer. So we've really upped our effort to work on all facets of veterans affairs to do a much better job. And so we're providing more resources to do that. We're putting more people. We want to support the veterans organizations because, again, the American Legion, there's VFW, there's a lot of great organizations out there. But we're being proactive, and I'll give you a couple of illustrations. One is we partnered with the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs on a big job fair in Detroit. And it was one of the pilots they're running around the country. This is one of the first they've done around the nation. We had over 5,000 veterans come in. 1,300 job offers went out to veterans coming out of a 3-day fair. That's pretty cool. But we're not stopping there. One of the things we're trying to do, for example, with Michigan National Guard units, is to say, what can we do to help them while they're still in the field so when they come back, they can have a job? So we're doing much more outreach now, using technology to say, how can we get them job postings, applications. We're even looking at how they could do interviews, or they could be in Afghanistan, and how they could look to get a job. Because when I talk to our guards people, it is really terrible. It's somewhere in the range, again, it's not scientific, but I've asked guard units. It's somewhere in the range of about 30-35% are looking for work. That's awful. So we're working really hard to do better at that. And one illustration, just as an aside, we should be so proud of our veterans, the people serving our country. I made a trip to Afghanistan earlier this year, and I went and visited the 125th Infantry, a Michigan Guard unit, up in the Northern Forward Operating Base. And when I got off the helicopter, I went with 2 other governors. When I got off the helicopter, they asked me to do a re-enlistment ceremony for 9 soldiers. And I talked to these soldiers. Some of them were on their first tour of duty and were already re-enlisting while they're in the field in Afghanistan. I can tell you that's a place you don't want to be if you had a choice, if you weren't serving our country. The other part is there were people there on their 3rd tour. They'd been to Bosnia, Iraq, and now Afghanistan serving our country. So we need to work really hard to do whatever we can to help our veterans be successful. So that is a big deal. So it's always great to get that question.
Governor, now via Google Hangout, we're going to go to Lapeer County Education and Tech Center. Representative Daley is standing by. Representative?
Governor, welcome to the heart of the thumb. We're all here from Lapeer County saying hello to you tonight. We've got a question from Bob Murphy from Metamora. Please give us your reasoning for your veto of the voter ID bills.
Oh, the voter ID. I got you, Kevin. Thank you. And I appreciate that. One side note before I do this. Like I said, we've done this 2 or 3 times. Now, when we first started doing this, you had really blah pictures in the background. Now, all these guys are getting really good at marketing. If you look at every site we're going to, now we can see Lansing, the Lapeer Intermediate School District. There's marketing pieces coming across in these places. You guys are doing pretty slick now about getting smart about leveraging technology. But to go to the voter ID question, and I think you won the award tonight, Kevin. I think you guys have the best marketing.
Good.
I did veto a couple bills, and it was really on the question. One was about training, and it was really, there were some issues, technical issues with the bill about making sure training could be done right and for the long term. The other one was on a bill that related to, people said voter ID. The issue I had was about U.S. citizenship. And to be a voter in our state, you should be a U.S. citizen. No question about that. But my concern is it could be a confusing situation where some people might get confused, might not check the box, and might not have their vote count when they really were a U.S. citizen. And what do I mean by that? And many of you, if you voted, you may have gone through that process. If you voted absentee, you did for sure. Where basically, you start with the application, and it says, I, Rick Snyder, you have to put in Rick Snyder, who resides at, and you had to put your address. Remember that part? And then you said, the next thing, typically on the one I filled out, had, are you a U.S. citizen, yes or no? And then I asked the reason why you were voting absentee. Now, the thing is I worry that a lot of people who are doing this is they may forget to check the box, or there could be an issue there. And if they did not check the box yes, under the bill that was proposed to me, their vote would not count. And that could be a loss for someone that's really a U.S. citizen, because I said, in my view, there was a much simpler alternative. Because again, I don't want to just say I'm a problem. Here's the alternative solution that I asked the legislature to look at, and hopefully they'll go through and put through, which was avoid all the confusion by simply going, I, put in your name, Rick Snyder, a U.S. citizen who resides at, and everyone putting in their name and address would see you have to be a U.S. citizen. And they simply could sign. And so you took out all the confusion about checking a box yes or no. But it made the point about saying you need to be a U.S. citizen. So I just thought there was a simpler, better alternative that, again, I appreciate people being concerned about the topic, but I just thought there was less room for confusion. And again, somebody that is a rightful citizen getting confused and not voting, I don't want to see that happen to anybody. So that's why it got vetoed. And I actually told the legislators I'd be happy to look at it again, and would they consider just adding a U.S. citizen in that first line next to where you put your name. So it ended up being a lot bigger deal than I thought it should be. But it's voting rights, and that's really important. And again, that's where it made me feel good that I was trying to focus in on something that I just had a little bit different perspective, but I thought it was an easier, better way.
Governor, thanks. Blake is here from Hazlitt. Blake, could you raise your hand, please? Blake's question is, what is the current effect of the changes made to the Michigan business tax?
Well, the best part is we got rid of the Michigan business tax. It was the dumbest tax in the United States, so I appreciate you asking. I always had fun with this because on the campaign trail I ran against some other candidates. Everybody wanted to do something to the Michigan business tax. But a lot of them want to cut it in half or get rid of the surcharge. And my favorite answer was an old math thing. If you take dumb and divide by 2, it's still dumb. So that's why the whole thing should go away. And one of the things people like to bring up is to say, well, you gave this huge break to business. Why did business get a huge tax break? Well, they didn't get a huge tax break, the way I view it, because let's stop and talk about how the Michigan business tax works for a minute. It was really dumb. It had all these calculations, hardly anyone could figure it out. It had more credits and exceptions, it was like Swiss cheese. But it was a tax that was essentially a double tax. Now, one of the things you hired me to do was to create more and better jobs in terms of creating that environment, right? Now, who are the job creators? Small business people, medium-sized business people, largely people that were subjected to the Michigan business tax. Step back for a minute and think about how their tax system works. Again, we put in a corporate income tax for regular corporations at 6%, so they didn't get a break. Big companies, the bigger companies. But what we did for small and medium-sized business people is they're still paying the same tax you pay. What they do is they put their income on their individual tax return because it flows through, and they pay the Michigan income tax. So just like you have salaries and wages, small business, medium-sized business, all those people were already paying the Michigan income tax like you and I. And that's a fair answer, right? They should. But in addition to that, we said, let's stick them with this Michigan business tax on top of that. I don't think you'd be very happy if you had some special tax put on your salary. So we had an extra tax we wanted to put on the people that are the job creators. And you know what that did really well? The people that celebrated that tax the most is the people of Indiana. Because if you went down to Indiana and said, what's the biggest source of business that you have in Indiana, it was businesses moving out of the state of Michigan. Because we had a dumb, unfair system. So all we did was get rid of a dumb, stupid tax and say, you should pay the same amount that you and I pay on our salaries and wages. Pretty straightforward.
Governor, we're going to go back to Macomb Community College with Representative Outman. Representative?
Governor, this question is, are there grants available for disabled individuals to start businesses?
Oh, are there grants available? We actually have programs to help people in terms of starting. It depends on their particular disability. Again, we have the Commission for the Blind, different groups out there working because, again, we want to try to help disabled people be successful. So typically there are Michigan programs to try to help people if they're interested in doing business with the state or other government units. Many governmental units actually have systems to say you'll get some preference in terms of contracting and different ideas depending on how they became disabled and what that disability is. So we don't have separate grant programs per se, but we do try to really encourage disabled people to be successful and build their businesses because I view that as a great way to create jobs.
Governor, thanks. We're going to go once again to Washtenaw Intermediate School District with Representative Ouimet. Representative?
Yes, thank you. This question has had great discussion as well, and certainly in Washtenaw County and throughout the state, Rick. And it is, why are the teachers being attacked, i.e. pensions, health care, teacher tenure, collection of union dues, just in general, the approach towards public education?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And in some ways, being a teacher is a tough profession. I can see why people could have concerns because what we've had to do is a couple things. One is we've had to make some serious reforms to our educational system. And that's not an attack on teachers at all, nor administrators, nor anyone in the system. The simple fact is our educational system is not working the way it should. It had become too much about money as opposed to the kids. And we need to get back to a focus on student growth. So we want to put a lot of reforms in place to say the focus needs to be on helping our kids succeed. And if you wonder if that's true, there are studies out there that when we were looking at what percentage of our kids are college ready, if they looked at the ACT test and all subjects, and again, not all kids should go to college. A lot of it can be skilled trades, but they're going to need some sort of training most likely after high school. And if you looked at it, the percentage of kids that were doing well in all 4 subjects was about 17%. That's a travesty. The other one I look at to say, okay, you got 1 point of reference, is that accurate or not? So if you go to the community colleges and talk to the people running the community colleges and say, what percentage of the kids coming in after finishing high school have to take a remedial class before they can take an entry-level community college class? You know what that percentage runs across the state? It varies somewhat, but the general range is about 60% plus have to take a remedial class. And I think that's a travesty. If you have a high school diploma, my view is you should be able to walk in and take a community college entry-level class. So our system's broken. So that's why we had to do a lot of things to look at teacher tenure. We're looking at teacher effectiveness. A lot of this, though, is to give teachers better tools. One of the things we're funding this year is a whole study on teacher effectiveness. And the goal isn't to punish teachers. It's how teachers can help other teachers, how administrators can help teachers get better tools, better resources to be more successful. And it's really being led by educators, are the people that are coming up with those resources. So if you think about it, it's something that I think is a good answer long term, but it is a transition. And one of the things that relate to that we included in the package was creating something I think is really cool for teachers. We need to create a master teacher category. Because think about that. How often do we tell a teacher, or they sort of feel compelled to say they have to be a principal or an administrator for their career path when they're an awesome teacher? So we created another category that will be rolled out that will basically say, if you're the very best teacher, why don't you stay in the classroom and help figure out how to teach other teachers in addition to your normal classroom responsibilities? But here's a way to make more money, to get better recognition, to be successful. I think that's really cool. But that takes more time to get done. But that is part of the process. It's to help everyone. It's about winning together. And then on the pension question and that whole area, we had to make some major reforms to the public sector in terms of both state employees, other employees that were in our pension systems, because we had built an unsustainable pension and healthcare system that literally was adding up to billions and billions of dollars. Not just the teacher system, but the public employee system outside the state system. We had racked up $45 billion of unfunded liabilities. Now, my view is I would rather reform a system so we know that we're funding it the right way, we're putting resources in it. It wouldn't be as rich, but it's going to be a system that's going to be there for the people when they retire in a financially sound fashion. Again, that's the accountant in me coming out. And if you think about it, I think we're helping lead the country and being responsible while at the same time trying to take care of people in the system. Because our goal is we want the best teachers. We want great people in the school system. But look at Washington and the mess there. I mean, we're doing some of the tough, hard things, but we're getting them behind us so then we can build in a positive way. Where that problem in Washington is just becoming a bigger and bigger mess. And it's going to get resolved one way or another, but wouldn't you rather have people that are being proactive and thoughtful to say, let's make a sustainable system that can treat people the right way for the long term to make sure their benefits and opportunities are there? And so that was the second part of that, is we did have to do some major reforms, but the good part is we're getting these things behind us. There's some things we still need to look at for the public employee system. The state system we took care of last year. And we're bringing down these liabilities, and we're funding these liabilities, and we're going to do it in a thoughtful way. So again, our kids are not going to be left with some huge disaster that basically we inherited. But we're responsible. I want to take care of this stuff. I want to clean it up. So the people coming in the future, or you in future years, aren't going to have to be wondering, what about this thing? You can feel good that it's being addressed. And you can focus on more important things in your life.
Governor, back to Grand Rapids ITT Tech Campus with Representative McGregor. Representative, you're on with the Governor.
Yeah, Governor, I have two similar questions, one from Celeste Johnson from Plainfield Township and one from Claudia Clusty from Grand Rapids, and they both are concerned with driver's license to the legal aliens, and would like your response on how come the state of Michigan is providing these driver's licenses.
Yeah, well, again, the Secretary of State's doing a good job of managing our system because their goal is illegal aliens are a problem in our country, and it needs to be addressed. The challenge there is really a federal question. So the disappointing part is the federal government has not stepped up to the plate to address it in an appropriate way, in my view. The real question, the other part, though, I always like to mention when I talk about illegal immigration is I'm a huge advocate of legal immigration. And we need to make sure in our country we don't create an atmosphere to say we want people here. We want them here legally. And in fact, we need to encourage that for the ones, one classic illustration, I'm actually advocating for students that come get a PhD from our universities in engineering or a master's in engineering, that we actually help get them a green card because they create jobs. They're actually going to do startup companies and create jobs here instead of just we spend all this money to educate them and we tell them to get out and have them go back home and start some big business there. That's really dumb. So a lot of this is this balancing of illegal immigration and legal immigration, and I really encourage the federal government to get their act together because it's not a great system we have today. We're not dealing with either world very appropriately.
We're going to go back to Lapeer County Education and Tech Center with Representative Daley. Representative, you're on with the governor.
Governor from North Branch, Michigan, Ann Heyer asks, are you prepared to protect Michigan citizens from attacks on our animal industry by radical animal rights groups such as PETA and HSUS?
Yeah, well, I can tell where they're coming from in terms of that question. Yeah, one of the things we have to do is we've addressed a number of these in terms of Michigan has a great agricultural environment, and we have the right to farm bill, and we put in things like MEEP, which are to qualify organizations and be supportive of best practices. Because again, the point is that's part of our economy, that's part of our culture. We've got a great dairy industry, a great cattle industry, hogs. You can go down the list. One of the things that amazed me is I went to an event where McDonald's was actually having a celebration about how much they buy in Michigan, and I forgot the specific number, but it was like 77 million dozen eggs they buy from Michigan. Have you ever thought a number that big? And I'm talking 1 year. So a lot of it is I think we've got a good environment in terms of how we're doing things, and we're going to stick to that because agriculture is fundamental, and I want to give a shout out to anyone in ag. You didn't get the attaboys you should have gotten over the last decade for the wonderful things you did for our economy while a lot of us were suffering. So again, we just need to do things in a smart way where they're environmentally conscious. But I mentioned one thing many of you may not know about, MEEP, which is kind of a code word, so I apologize for using it. It was actually the first bill I signed, and Kevin, you're a good person on the MEEP in terms of making that happen, it's really the Michigan Agricultural Environmental Assurance Program, which really works with farmers. And it's a voluntary program, but we help do the reviews that if a farmer wants, they will do best practices on their farm in terms of environmental stewardship, and we'll actually go in and audit them and recognize for among being the best, and it actually gives them some extra privileges in terms of how we interact with them from an inspection side. So it's a win all around. So I really like the concept of setting up a quality control system that farmers really enjoy, and we're actually seeing a lot more farms get MEEP certified. And we have some big goals there, but it's coming along nicely. So that ties right into that. We are going to work hard to make sure we have a great ag industry, but it's being environmentally responsible to answer those specific groups and those people that occasionally will raise challenging questions.
Governor, thanks. Mary is here from Lansing. Mary, could you raise your hand? And Mary asks, how can we control the number of casinos in the state?
Mary? Well, I appreciate that. And that was one of the ballot initiatives that was being talked about. That one looks like it won't make the ballot in terms of adding more, which is a good thing. In some ways, adding more casinos, I'm not a big fan of casinos. I think they have some recreational value, but they also create a lot of social costs in terms of domestic violence, other family issues, other problems. So we need to recognize they have some value because of, again, the history. We have them already in Michigan, but to see a widespread expansion under current conditions, I don't think would be a good thing. One thing on the whole ballot question, I ask you to really think about this one. I haven't come out on all these proposals yet, but if you look at, in some ways, Michigan's sort of like California light, where we're getting all kinds of proposals coming up to amend the Michigan Constitution. And I can tell you, people should always step back for a moment before we actually decide to amend the Constitution, because that's a really big move. And it really creates a lot of issues for your legislators, for me, for anyone else trying to operate. So if you look at these proposals, largely across the board, I don't think they're a good idea. And so I really hope you look closely at them, because I think you're just going to say no to most of them, or at least I hope so when you look at them, because if you step back and look, there are other alternatives, they're missing a point, or is some special interest groups really saying they have an agenda that they're trying to have happen at the expense of all of us, and they're spending lots of money to make that agenda happen.
We're going to go back to Mount Calm Community College and Representative Outman. Representative?
Governor, what help is available for people who are not able to work, have been denied a bridge card, and are too young for Social Security, but have been denied disability?
Good question, Rick. One of the things you find is we have been going through difficult times, so we do want a safety net for people. That's always a question that when you look at social services and the net we provide, is we always want to be cognizant of stopping any fraud or abuse going on. And we've been doing a better job on that. We still can do a better job. But we also have had a lot of tough years where people need some temporary assistance or support. So we want to be thoughtful about that. But one of the answers in the long term is not about having someone stay on support for too long. In some ways, we had a system in Michigan where someone could almost permanently be on support. And that's not a good answer. The real answer you need to get to is how do you help people find a job? And that's the answer that really matters. Because if someone has a job, the probabilities of them needing help go down dramatically. They may need some assistance while they work out of their situation. The issue of them getting into the criminal justice system goes down dramatically. Their health is probably improved because they're working. So finding a job is not the solution to every problem in life, but having a job is the critical element, along with a strong family, to helping people be successful. So one of the things we created this last year, because I'm concerned about that, is we created a program for the structurally unemployed, for the people that really didn't have a track record of having work experience and might not have had even for their parents or parent. So we created something called Community Ventures. And that's focused through the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, and it's to partner with organizations. Again, it's not working for the state. It's to go in and work with nonprofits, public-private partnerships, private companies to say, let's get some jobs going for the structurally unemployed. And we're starting in our most distressed cities. There are rural areas that also need help and that assistance, but we've got 4 cities that are among the top 10 in crime in the country. And that's wrong. So that was the focus point where we're putting the first resources to do this. And we're actually seeing some pretty good progress about private companies coming forward, about nonprofit organizations like Focus Hope or Goodwill being part of the process, about helping people get that first job and understanding the cultural issues of what basic skills you need, how do you do that. Because my view is the rules I gave them were pretty simple. I said, if you're going to start an enterprise that's going to do this kind of work, they got to make at least $1. And I said, I don't care if it's a for-profit or not-for-profit, I don't care. But these enterprises should make $1. And why did I say that? So it wouldn't be a temporary make-work job. So it wouldn't only be there until the money ran out. But we would help seed resources until it was a self-sustaining stuff. So if it was making $1, it would continue to exist and continue in the future to employ people. The other thing to do is, once you get people working, then you can do a much better job of laying on workforce development programs to say, how do they have an opportunity to move up the economic ladder? Again, this is going back to how do you create the path to the middle class, which we need to do a better job of. So it was really to be a longer-term system to say, it's not about a dead-end job or a job that only lasts so long, Community Ventures. The goal of Community Ventures is a longer-term path to success, at least in terms of opportunity for people. And that wasn't really being done very well in our state. So I'm really proud this last budget year we put dollar resources and we're putting a good focus and we're getting a great response from people that really want to do that.
Back out to Washtenaw Intermediate School District with Representative Ouimet. And Representative, you're on with the Governor.
Thank you. This is a kind of a two-pronged question, Governor. The first is, with your focus, and I think the state legislature as well, regarding jobs in the economy, why are we seeing so much discussion or issues regarding social issues? And the second part, and I think we'd be remiss not to spend some time asking the question about the city of Detroit and the court case there and where we're at with the city of Detroit schools.
Great. Well, I appreciate both those questions. The first issue is about social issues. Well, what I would describe is we have many branches of government. We've got 3 branches of government. I can tell you the executive branch, social issues I really don't spend time on. They're not on my agenda. My agenda is jobs and kids, because I think those are the top priorities, and that's where I spend my focus. When we have lots more jobs and when we know our kids are all fine, well, I might add more to my list. But at this point in time, my priority, the most important thing I think we need to focus on are jobs and kids. Now, we have people in the legislature, and we have a lot of people there. We have the House and the Senate. I respect them. They're a separate branch of government, and they should feel free to bring up issues they think important because they hear them from, again, our customers. So I can tell you in terms of those issues, my balance act is, if you ask me and you go down the list that we talk about in the administration or the things we bring forward, is jobs and kids. To the degree you have issues with social issues, I suggest if you want them there, you should talk to your legislator. If you don't want them there, you should talk to your legislator and say, why are you bringing them up? But beyond that, it's just a difference because I view it, jobs and kids are number one in terms of how we focus on things. And that's the path we're going to stay on, at least from my perspective. In terms of Detroit, for Michigan to be a great state again, we have to get Detroit on a positive path, regardless of where you live in Michigan, because it does represent a big piece of our state. And if you stop and look at it, the citizens of Detroit are not getting the services they deserve. They deserve a better answer. And so the thing is how do we partner, be a good partner? Because my goal is not to run the city of Detroit. My goal is not to have an emergency manager in Detroit. My goal is for the state to be a supportive partner so Detroit can do two things. One, it can get financially stable, and two, it can help give better services to its citizens. And there are a lot of good things going on in Detroit we don't hear about or talk about. So one of the things we need is a more positive vision for Detroit. Right now, you may not realize this, occupancy in Midtown and downtown Detroit is about 95%. And it's young people that have moved into the city because they think that part of the city is really cool. And they want to live in Detroit. And if you go down to Detroit and do the riverfront, it's really neat. That's the opportunity we're trying to do with Belle Isle now, is we could make Belle Isle a much nicer place and free up resources for the city to use in other parts of the city if we could lease it and make it a state park. Now the lawsuit side, and I'll say this briefly because this could be on the ballot too, this issue of the emergency manager law. We've had an emergency manager law in Michigan since Governor Blanchard. It's Public Act 72, and it's back in force right now. We're living on it now. But Public Act 72 didn't address two big problems that I believe that needed to be answered, and I appreciate all the legislators that supported me in doing this legislation called Public Act 4 back in early 2011. And the two things it did were, one, it put in an early warning system. Because the old system didn't have anything to keep track of cities, to work with cities or school districts to say, if you're starting to get in trouble, we can work with you on doing a consent agreement, we can get you some support and consulting resources, we can help you figure out how to get out of this mess before it becomes an emergency, a real crisis. So we put in an early warning system. And that's one thing you'll hear about, there's a review team or there's a consent agreement. It's all to help avoid having an emergency manager by solving the problem before it becomes that huge crisis. Second part we did is if that huge crisis arrives, and there really is a crisis, if you ever read one of these reports from an objective review team, you'll go, oh my gosh, this is a disaster. What do? Was the emergency manager under the old law didn't have enough powers to come in, do their job, get done, and get out. They could be there a very long time. Because my view, it's much better than going into bankruptcy to have some Michigander come in to say, let's get your job done, get it over with, get it cleaned up, and get out, and get it back to the community. And so we gave them more powers to do things. Some people didn't like them having more powers. But the point is they were still being represented. I'm still the governor. And the goal there is to get them back on their feet so the local community could run their community faster and better. So I appreciate it. If you look at Public Act 4, you can really see it was to deal with a crisis. Because if we don't have that, and we don't have an emergency manager law in some fashion, what are we left with? Just letting communities go into oblivion, school districts go into oblivion, and have to look at bankruptcy or just disaster? Not paying anyone or not having any resources. So for all the people that don't like this, how many times have you heard them come up with an alternative? Something different, instead of saying, I don't like it. So that's something I hope you really focus on as we may see this on the ballot, and you pass word to people that we're really just trying to help solve a real crisis, short of going into bankruptcy. So,
Governor, some final thoughts.
yeah, I appreciate it. Hopefully it's been worthwhile. I appreciate all the sites, all the representatives part of this. You've done great. I really appreciate the partnership we have. These are fabulous legislators. We really work as a team. But what I would tell you is going back to the beginning, it's about relentless positive action. The reinvention of Michigan is not about me. It's not about the legislators. It's about Michiganders finally getting our act together again, to be proud of who we are, to stop fighting with one another, to stop looking in that rearview mirror saying our best days are behind us, and to really step up and say, isn't it time that we believe in ourselves enough to say we can be positive on solving our problems? That we can do it in a way where we're not fighting, just to say, why don't we just use common sense and say, here's a problem that's been a problem a long time, apply some common sense, solve it, solve the next problem, and keep going? And then get fired up to say, our best days are not behind us. Our best days are ahead of us. And we're creating an environment where both us, but our kids and our kids' kids can say they're focused on today and tomorrow. They're not having to worry about the mess of the past because it's gotten cleaned up. That's pretty cool. And that's why I'm fired up. And I hope you go out here, whether you're remote or you're here in person, that you go out here fired up. And when you meet someone, the next person you meet coming out of this, you can say, this wasn't just a nice meeting. I really learned some things, and I'm excited now. We are reinventing Michigan. We got a lot more work to do. But we're making a difference, and we're on the path to success. So thank you so much for spending your time. And I really appreciate the questions and feedback. It just makes us better. So thanks to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for your company tonight.
Thank you.
Be sure to join us online at facebook.com/Rick for Michigan, also twitter.com, One Tough Nerd, youtube.com/Governor Snyder. This concludes our program. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.